In the bustling heart of Port Victoria, beneath the faded ceiling of a cramped two-room apartment, lived Eliona Duru, a young woman burdened by a lifetime of responsibility far beyond her years. Life had carved deep lines into her family's story. Her mother, Memara Dees, struggled with chronic asthma, while her father, Jonas Duru, lost a leg years ago in a mining explosion during his days as a soldier. The government had long forgotten him. There were no benefits, no pension, just silence and slow decay. Eliona had been only 4 when her father returned home, broken and bitter. By 16, her mother had given birth to 2 more children, Chaik and Ife, whose schooling became yet another weight upon her shoulders. Eliona had always dreamt of becoming a doctor, picturing herself in a white coat healing the kind of pain that haunted her family. But dreams did not pay rent, and hunger didn't care about ambition. Eventually, she made the hardest decision of her young life. She dropped out of school. Days turned into an endless blur of labor. Mornings found her waitressing at a roadside cafe. Afternoons, she hawked vegetables under the scorching sun at the local market. The Duru family's rent, $500,000 a month, had become impossible to meet. Each day, eviction loomed like a storm cloud. One afternoon, as she stepped outside with a bag of produce, her landlady, Madame Felicia, blocked her path. With her arms crossed and a cigarette dangling from her lips, Felicia's tone was sharp and unforgiving. "Eliona, 3 months, no rent. Do you think I'm stupid?" "Please, Madame Felicia," Eliona pleaded softly. "My mother's been very sick." "Sick? Everyone's sick when it's time to pay rent." Felicia snapped. "If I don't get at least 1 month's payment by tomorrow, pack your things and go." When the woman stomped off, Eliona's knees nearly gave out. Her mother's medicine alone cost over 70,000 Nigerian nairas per week, and her cafe wages barely covered food. At the cafe later that evening, her co-worker Mina noticed her silent despair. "You look like someone who's just lost her dowry," Mina teased. "We're about to lose our home," Eliona murmured. Before Mina could respond, the flamboyant barista, Talu, called out, "Hey, stop gossiping and take the coffee to table 9. Eliona carried the tray, unaware that fate awaited her there. At the corner table sat 2 sharply dressed men in heated discussion. One of them, tall, confident, and clearly used to authority, glanced up just as she placed his cup down. Without hesitation, he slid a sleek business card toward her. "If you ever find someone who can handle me," he said coolly, "call that number." Then he stood, left his untouched coffee, and walked out. That night, long after the cafe closed, curiosity gnawed at Eliona. She picked up the office phone with trembling fingers and dialed the number. "Good evening," a deep voice answered. "This is Damien Cole speaking." "Sir," she stammered, "you left your card earlier today. I'd like to apply for the opportunity you mentioned." There was silence. Then, "Where are you now?" She gave her location. "Stay there," he said. "I'm sending a driver." Within the hour, a black SUV rolled to a stop beside her. The driver opened the door. "Miss Duru? Mr. Cole sent me." Eliona hesitated only a moment before stepping inside. The car pulled away, and the city lights blurred behind her, each one flickering like a warning she couldn't read. The SUV glided silently through the midnight streets, its tinted windows reflecting the passing lights of Port Victoria. Eliona sat in the back seat, her hands clasped tightly on her lap, her mind racing faster than the car itself. The driver said nothing, and the silence between them pressed like a weight. When the car finally stopped, she looked out the window and gasped. Before her rose a massive, gated estate that looked like it had been plucked from another world, a world of wealth, serenity, and untouchable elegance. The gates opened as if by magic, and the vehicle rolled smoothly into a courtyard paved with marble tiles. The door opened, and a middle-aged woman dressed in a crisp uniform greeted her with a polite bow. "Welcome, Miss Duru. Mr. Cole is expecting you." Inside, Eliona was ushered through a corridor filled with expensive art and chandeliers that scattered light like captured stars. She barely had time to breathe before the woman led her into a lavish dining hall. At the far end of a long mahogany table sat Damien Cole, the man from the cafe, his presence commanding, his expression unreadable. "Please," he said, gesturing to the seat opposite him. "Sit." Eliona obeyed, her heart pounding. The table was set for a feast: grilled fish, golden rice, spiced goat, and wine that shimmered like rubies in crystal glasses. Damien leaned forward, elbows resting lightly on the table. "Tell me, Eliona, what is it you want?" The question caught her off guard. She hesitated before whispering, "I need money, sir. My family is struggling. I'll do anything." His eyes narrowed slightly, studying her face. "Anything?" She nodded, her voice trembling. "My mother is sick. My father can't work. We're months behind on rent." He let out a slow breath. "Are you saying you'd sell something as precious as your dignity to save them?" Tears filled her eyes. "If it's the only way to help them, yes." Damien looked down at his plate, then back at her, his gaze softer but still sharp. "You poor thing," he murmured. "You don't belong in that kind of suffering." He stood, walked around the table, and extended a hand. "Come with me." She followed him through a side door into a private wing of the mansion. The walls were painted in muted gold, the air thick with perfume and quiet luxury. Another woman appeared, older, composed, her tone respectful but distant. "Prepare her," Damien ordered. The woman nodded and led Eliana to a large suite. The room looked more like a royal chamber than anything she had ever imagined. Silken drapes, a private bath already filled with warm water, a vanity lined with unfamiliar beauty products. As the older woman poured scented oil into the bath, she said quietly, "You should know, Mr. Cole doesn't keep them long." "Them?" Eliana asked faintly. "The girls before you," the woman replied. "You're the eighth." Eliana's stomach twisted. She wanted to run, to scream, but she thought of her mother gasping for air, her brother's hungry faces. Her jaw tightened. When she was dressed again, the woman handed her a soft green robe and whispered, "He's waiting." Her knees trembled as she stepped into the adjoining chamber. The room was dimly lit in amber hues. Damien stood near the window, his broad back turned. When he turned to face her, his eyes carried a mix of hunger and loneliness. "Eliana," he said quietly, "I won't hurt you. But I need you to understand, once you step closer, you can't go back." And though her heart screamed for caution, her feet carried her forward, one step into a night that would change everything. When Eliana opened her eyes, the first thing she noticed was the soft hum of morning silence. Sunlight streamed gently through sheer curtains, painting the marble floor in gold. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was, until she felt the faint ache in her body, the soreness that pulled her back to memory. Two women stood nearby, carefully wiping her skin with warm towels. "Please don't move, Ma," one of them said softly. "Mr. Cole instructed us to take care of you. If you struggle, we'll be blamed." Eliana clenched her jaw and turned her face away. She felt both clean and contaminated, cherished and used. When they finished, they helped her into a silk gown and offered her breakfast. She declined. Her mind was already elsewhere, on her family, her mother's medicine, and the unpaid rent waiting like a storm cloud back home. The same driver from the previous night arrived to take her back. Just before she left, a staff member handed her a cream-colored envelope. "Mr. Cole asked me to give you this, Ma." Eliana waited until the car was far from the estate before she opened it. Inside was a thick bundle of cash, 18 million, and a handwritten note that read, "This is only the beginning. Stay close, and there will be more." Her stomach twisted. She had sold her body for money. She had done the unthinkable, but now she held the price of her sacrifice in her trembling hands. When she reached home, she slipped quietly into the compound, careful not to draw attention. Her father was sitting by the window. "You came late," he said. "Overtime." "Something like that, Papa." Her mother appeared at the door, frail but smiling. "Madame Felicia hasn't shown up yet," she said with relief. Eliana nodded, masking the turmoil inside her. "That's good. Maybe she'll give us more time." She noticed her mother's eyes drifting toward her fine new clothes. "A co-worker lent me these," she lied smoothly. "There was a formal event." In her room, she opened the envelope again and stared at the cash. 18 million Nigerian nairas. Enough to pay rent, buy medicine, even return to school. She took 6 million Nigerian nairas aside and handed it to her mother. "It's from the cafe," she said. "They gave me extra for covering extra shifts." Her mother's face lit up. "My daughter, you're a miracle." Eliana smiled faintly. "Maybe," she whispered. Days passed, and she tried to return to normal. At the cafe, she worked quietly, avoiding questions. But fate had other plans. That afternoon, as she cleaned a table, she froze. Damien Cole walked through the door, tall, composed, and devastatingly confident. This time, he wasn't alone. A stunning woman with flawless makeup and the air of privilege clung to his arm. Eliana turned away instantly, pretending to focus on another table. but the woman's sharp voice carried across the room. "Waitress. 2 cups of espresso, 20% sugar." Eliana delivered the order, avoiding their gaze. The woman's tone dripped with disdain. "You look familiar," she said coldly. Eliana smiled faintly. "I serve many customers, ma." Hours later, just as her shift ended, the cafe phone rang. Mina called out, "Eliana, it's for you." "Sounds like money calling." Eliana hesitated before answering. "I'll send a driver tonight," Damien's voice said. "We need to talk." "I can't," she whispered. "Not tonight." "Then tomorrow," he said firmly. "And Eliana, don't pretend you've forgotten what we started." The line went dead, leaving her heart pounding. She knew she should run from him, but part of her couldn't. Not yet. The next evening, Eliana stood at the market helping Uncle Sei, her mother's cousin, arrange vegetables on wooden trays when a sudden stir of movement caught her attention. 3 black SUVs pulled up, sleek and imposing. From one of them stepped Damien Cole, surrounded by his ever-present security men. His commanding presence turned heads immediately. Uncle Sei frowned. "Eliana, what's happening?" Before she could answer, Damien's deep voice rang out. "She's my employee." He turned to Sei and added, "Pick one. Either I buy everything here, or she leaves with me now." The older man sighed heavily. "Ah, my child, you'd better go. This man doesn't seem like someone who takes no for an answer." Damien handed him a wad of cash, 2 million, then opened the car door for Eliana, his expression unreadable. As the car pulled away, she crossed her arms. "You can't just appear everywhere I work and drag me off like this." He smiled faintly. "If I don't, you'll keep running. And I can't sleep when I don't know where you are." "Maybe that's because you have a girlfriend to occupy your thoughts," she snapped. Damien chuckled. "You mean Clarice? You'll understand soon." They drove in silence for a while, until the car turned into the parking lot of an upscale rooftop restaurant. "Dinner," he announced. "No negotiations." Eliana sighed but followed him. A waiting attendant handed her a long emerald dress and ushered her into a changing room. When she emerged, her reflection startled her. The fabric hugged her curves, the light makeup softened her features, and her hair shimmered under the ambient lights. At their table, Damien rose and pulled out her chair with gentlemanly precision. "You look beautiful," he said, eyes warm. "This dress isn't mine," she murmured. "It is now." As they ate, she tried not to enjoy the moment. The dishes were exquisite: lobster, scallops, rice with saffron, and wine that left a gentle sweetness on her tongue. But Damien's words kept unsettling her. "Work for me," he said suddenly. She blinked. "As what?" "My assistant," he replied. "Or secretary, whichever title sounds less intimidating. Leave that cafe and market stall. I'll handle your salary. You'll stay close to me." Eliana set her fork down, her pulse quickening. "You're serious?" "Completely. I can't stand seeing you struggle when I can fix it." "And what happens when you get bored?" she asked quietly. "Like you did with those before me." Damien leaned in, voice low. "If I ever let you go, it won't be because I'm bored. It'll be because I've stopped breathing." His words silenced her. She didn't answer, afraid of what she might say. Later that night, he drove her home himself. When he stopped at her gate, he didn't move to leave. "When will I see you again?" he asked softly. "You see me now," she replied, trying to sound unaffected. He smiled, brushing her hand with his thumb. "Eliana, you keep pretending you don't care, but I know you do." She slipped out of the car and walked away, heart hammering against her ribs. For the next few days, she avoided him, changed numbers, stopped showing up at the cafe, and helped full-time at the market. But her efforts didn't stop the ache that lingered. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face, heard his voice, and hated herself for missing him. Then one morning, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. 18th floor. Coal Industries Tower. Ask for me directly. She stared at the screen for a long time before whispering to herself, "I should delete this." But she didn't. By noon, Eliana stood before the towering glass structure of Coal Industries, her reflection trembling in the mirrored surface. The receptionist at the front desk blinked in surprise when she introduced herself. "Mr. Cole is expecting me," Eliana said quietly. Moments later, she was directed toward a private elevator. The doors slid open, and there he was. Damien Cole, dressed in a sharp grey suit, looking as though he'd been waiting for her all morning. His smile was soft, but his eyes told another story. "This way, Miss Juru," he said formally, guiding her inside. The elevator doors closed behind them. For a heartbeat, silence reigned. Then, without warning, he turned and pulled her into a fierce embrace. "I've missed you," he murmured against her shoulder. "You have no idea. I haven't slept in 2 days." Eliana's breath caught. She hadn't expected the vulnerability in his voice. She tried to respond, but his lips found hers before she could speak, the kiss charged with desperation and longing. When he finally pulled back, she was breathless. "Wait," she whispered, attempting a shaky smile. "Do I get paid for this?" He grinned, that boyish glimmer lighting his face. "Paid? No, you're getting my last name." "Damien, you're crazy." "Maybe," he said, scooping her effortlessly into his arms. "But you make me that way." He carried her into his office, setting her gently on his chair. "Work for me," he said again. "Be my assistant, for real this time." Eliana hesitated, searching his eyes. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious." When she finally nodded, his joy was instant. He let out a triumphant laugh, spinning her around. "You'll drive me insane if we're together every day," he teased, pressing a soft kiss to her neck. In that moment, something inside her shifted, fear melting into cautious hope. But the peace didn't last. Days later, Damien's former lover, Clarice, stormed into the office, her voice slicing through the air. "So this is why you ignored me? Because of her?" Eliana froze, clutching the file she was holding. "Clarice," Damien said calmly, "we're done. You and I were never meant to last. You left me for this." Clarice's glare fell on Eliana. "A waitress?" Eliana swallowed hard but held her ground. "I'm Mr. Cole's assistant," she said, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. Clarice's laugh was sharp, bitter. "Assistant? Don't humiliate yourself." Damien's tone darkened. "Enough. You've had every advantage, but you never gave me peace. Eliana does." Clarice's rage boiled over. She hurled a vase across the office, shattering it against the wall. Damien immediately pulled Eliana behind him, shielding her from the shards. "You'll regret this." Clarice screamed as security escorted her out. When the door finally closed, Damien exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "This wasn't how your first day should have gone." Eliana smiled faintly. "I've seen worse." He chuckled softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "That's what I love about you." Weeks passed, and their bond deepened, not the fragile passion of desperation, but the kind of connection that came with trust. Damien's gestures grew quieter yet more meaningful. He paid her father's medical bills, secured scholarships for her brothers, and ensured her mother had round-the-clock care, all without Eliana asking. When she confronted him about it, he only said, "You gave up everything for them. Let me give something back." Months later, their small wedding took place in the garden of the home he'd built for her family. A simple ceremony filled with laughter, tears, and a kind of peace Eliana had never known. 5 months into marriage, she stood on the balcony, her hands resting gently over her stomach. Damien came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "You're quiet," he whispered. "I was just thinking," she said softly, smiling, "about how far we've come." He kissed her temple. "And how far we'll still go." The stars above shimmered, and for the first time, Eliana believed in forever, not the kind that was promised, but the kind that was earned. Once, she had thought survival was all she could hope for. Now, standing in Damien's arms, she knew she had found something deeper, love that healed, love that chose her. She closed her eyes, heart steady, whispering into the night, "I'm home."